suppose this baptism means? What is baptism? What is it all about? Where does it come from? Anybody? Help me out here.
It's a covenant.
It comes what? Somebody said covenant. It is in keeping with the covenant. It is a part of covenant, which when we use that language, you all remember that covenant language is language of contract. It's language of agreement. It's language of quid pro quo. We will do this, you will do that. It's very significant. How far back does this baptism thing go? Goes back how far? I don't need precise years. If you can round it to, whoa, I don't know, a decade or a century or something like that.
Before Jesus.
Goes back well before Jesus. Indeed it does. The purification rituals. The purification rituals go back a long time. I don't think they go back as far as some would have us believe, but I do believe they go back at least as far as, say, 500 or 600 years before Jesus. I believe the chances are good there was some kind of antecedent, that they probably existed in what's referred to as the ancient Near East for quite a long time. But they didn't become formalized for, I would say, the rituals became in place around 500 or 600 years before Jesus. In fact, one of the ways that, I said this on Wednesday to a couple of folks, that one of the ways that people were able to determine that an archaeological site was a Judean site or a Hebraic site was that within this site would sometimes be what are called mikvot, which are places with stairs leading down into them, into which water was poured. And this was used for ritual cleansing. Ritual cleansing. Immersion. Now, when we talk about ritual cleansing, what are we talking about? Are we talking about using Purell on your hands? Or are we talking about something else? What are we talking about when we talk about ritual cleansing? If you're thinking something else, you're right. Brian.
Well, to me it seems to be a way to make your mind and spirit right.
It's a way
to enter into the presence of God.
It's a way to make your mind and spirit. This is actually exactly part and parcel to what we're talking about when we talk about ritual cleansing. Because we are not talking about 99.9% of the germs being cleared from your hands. We are not talking about that. And in the sort of the history of the ritual cleansing piece, there were two aspects of the ritual cleansing as it became more formalized and became a part of the structure and law of the Hebrew people, which then came down into the Christian corpus and into the Christian people and their practices. There were basically two kinds of cleansings. One was called, or would have been for ritual cleansing, and that would have been for things like if you touched a corpse, there would have been ritual cleansing for that. Or you remember the story of the woman hemorrhaging for all those 12 years. Bless her heart. Everything she touched would have been made ritually unclean. And so there was a ritual cleansing for that purpose. I find it extremely interesting that in the whole of the gospel, and I would like for you to correct me on this because I have been wrong once. I would be grateful for you to correct me on this, but I believe in the whole of the gospel corpus, we do not have an instance where Jesus felt the need to go through the temple ritual cleansing after having been touched by someone who had been unclean. Unclean by being a leper, for instance. I don't think that we have an example of that. So that is one form. And another form was a spiritual cleanliness. That a person sinned, basically. That a person broke the covenant with God or with people. And that required a different kind of cleansing. And what was the understanding about the ritual cleansing? And this is debatable. Okay, I think that when you have the conversation with people who talk about baptism and who come from the traditions of the Jewish faith or the Hebraic faith, I think that you have, it's an open question. But one of the things about immersing your hands in water, what was that all about? What does it take your mind back to? Genesis 1. Oh, yes. Genesis 1. It takes your mind back to Genesis 1. When the Spirit of the God moved over what? Over the water. And out of the water, what happened?
New life.
New life. The whole world was created out of the water. The whole world came out of the water. So the ritual aspect of immersing your body or your hands in the water was that your hands were recreated, or at least there was a whole new creation there. It was like, well, it was like a new birth. It was like a new birth. In the Diocese of Western Michigan, there are congregations, I know this probably will come as a surprise to you, but there are congregations that have been wounded. There are congregations that have been broken. There are people who have been wounded and who have been broken. And in the scheme of things, when we try to talk about healing, when we examine ways to go forward, we don't go back to renewal because we cannot renew what was. We cannot undo what was broken. But what we can do is we can look to a whole new heaven and a whole new earth, a new creation, something new. And that is what we look for. And that's what baptism is all about. All about. So we have these two basic structures of baptism, or cleansing, as it were. And which one or both of those was Jesus participating in when he came down to the river? Which of those was Jesus? What was the motivation for Jesus to be baptized? A
change point in his life.
A change point in his life. From what to what, Brian?
From the son of a carpenter to his own person.
To his own.
To begin to exemplify God's life within him.
This is a significant piece. This is a significant piece. Help me hold on to that while I take a little step around. When we talk about baptism in the 21st century, most of the time it is an ooh and ah moment, isn't it? Oh. Oh, that, oh, oh. Oh. We all laugh. The baby cries. And I don't understand why when I take a baby, oftentimes people will pinch the baby and make them cry. But it is an ooh and ah moment, and it is not understood as fully or in the same way as it was 2,000 years ago. And one of the things that when we do baptize Robert, when we do baptize him, we will talk about the nature of how in that row, which is empty today, and it touches my heart to see that row empty today, or the Smith's not here today, makes a difference to me, as I know it makes a difference to you. But there are 4 generations of Bronsons in that row when they're all here. And so somehow or another, there is a living out of the understanding of baptism. And the understanding of baptism is that in this new creation, you enter into something. You enter into a relationship. And it has a sense of covenant about it. It has a sense of sharing about it, where we belong to something that is greater than the sum of its parts. Where we enter into a new way of living. And I do believe I do believe that sometimes we look at baptism. We look at baptism as not just an entrance rite into a community so that you can officially have communion. It's not just about that, but it's about looking at what your life is going to be from now on. And this is what I believe Brian was speaking of when Jesus came down to that river to be baptized. That in this instance he was looking at his new life. His new life. And I think it's extraordinarily interesting and philosophically warming and theologically exciting to me that this takes place in the River Jordan. The symbol of where the people of God passed from where they once were into something new. We will renew our baptismal vows today. We will carry that on. We will renew our baptismal vows, and we will say together the promises. We will say them. And as we do so, let us remember that this is about something new. It's about what we are called to be. And please, my brothers and sisters, make no mistake. Each of you are called into this new order. Each of you are called to go outside and to be for the world the light to lighten the Gentiles. Each of you are called for that purpose. And we come together on Sunday. We come together on Sunday to refresh our batteries so that the light is brighter when we go outside. So I invite you into the covenant today. I invite you down to the river. I invite you to remember, renew, and create anew that person that God is asking you to be.